Hello and welcome to a new video. Thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be looking at a new book. Really pleased to share this book with you, and feel free to subscribe, hit that like button if you enjoy this video, and let's dive in. Today we're going to be looking at this book here. It's Teaching English as a Lingua Franca, and it's the journey from EFL to ELF. Now you're probably thinking ELF, Lord of the Rings, all that sort of stuff, but it's not that type of elf, I'm afraid. Actually, it's English as a lingua franca, and we're going to be looking at this book together. I'm also going to be sharing with you what I thought about this book here, and a small thing that, we'll see. But let's dive in. This book is written by Marek. Now, surname, not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but let me try. It's Marek Kiskowskiak or Kiskowskiak, not sure. And it's also published by Robert Lowe. And apologies if I've mispronounced your surname, Marek, but maybe, if we meet, you can let me know how to pronounce your surname, and I'll be sure to pronounce it correctly next time. Anyway, so this book, it's published by Delta Publishing. It's the latest book in the Teacher Development series, and they also have quite a lot of ideas, and it's really pushing the boundary with regards to English teaching. As you probably know, the Teaching Development series are split into 3 parts, and the first part, Part A, is really an introduction on how English as a lingua franca came about, its origins, history, and also pedagogical and critical elements of ELF. It gives a very good overview of ELF, and I'm quite pleased that the authors have offered a lot of additional recommended reading that you can also take away and have a look if you decide to look at ELF in a bit more detail. The second part, Part B, is broken down into 2 chapters, and the first chapter looks at developing an ELF mindset for just students as well as the teacher and the general context of where you're teaching. And there's around 14 lesson ideas within chapter 1. And these are ideas that you can split into 4 main topics. The first suggestion is the changing nature of English. The second that looks at this chapter is native speakers and ELT. It also looks at pronunciation and intelligibility in ELF. And finally, the 4th part or section within chapter 1 looks at from EFL to ELF. The second chapter looks at the skills and strategies that learners can take as well as the teacher, and it's developing an ELF skill set. Okay, so chapter 1 focuses on the mindset, and chapter 2 focuses on the particular skills. And the skills are spread between, as you know, maybe listening and pronunciation, grammar and vocabulary, intercultural competence, and finally communication strategies. And within these sections, so within listening and pronunciation, there's a total of 7 lessons. Within grammar and lexis, there are 8 lessons. Within intercultural competence, there are 10 lessons. And within the communication strategies section, within chapter 2, there are 8 lesson ideas. And all these ideas you can incorporate. And if you want to focus on a particular skill, such as grammar or vocabulary, then there are a lot of ideas within this book that you can pull out and also incorporate within your class. The final part looks at additional reflections and reading and ideas and thoughts with regards to ELF within a particular context. So for example, there's ELF within an academic English environment. and there's a lot of ideas and thoughts. But also within regards to these different contexts and ideas that you can consider, there's additional reading which is really, really valuable with regards to wanting to find out about this topic, this style or element of teaching within a particular context. So for example, for me, I would be really interested in teaching English as a lingua franca in an academic setting. Okay, and so with the reading, I can go away and I can source additional books that I can incorporate within that environment. And then there's the final section with regards to any other teaching development series, and this is the bibliography, and there's a load of reading that you can do in your own time, and it's really, really helpful. Okay, so you've got the physical book, and that's this in front of you, but that's not it as well, because on the Delta Publishing website, there's additional resources that you can pull. Any lesson that you wish to incorporate within your class, the resources are available online. So if we have a look online, and I'll put a link below with regards to where to get these resources, you can actually download the PDF, and rather than trying to photocopy from this book and then having to rephotocopy or expand, or because some of the lesson ideas are great, but if I just want to photocopy this, what I'd have to do is photocopy it, maybe zoom it by 117%, cut this out, put it back on the photocopier, zoom it out again so it's available. But I don't have to do that. All the resources here, for example, can be accessed via the PDF. Okay, so let's go. Let's have a look at the PDF, and let's have a look at this particular lesson. Okay, and this is the first lesson within this book, and it's why is English a global language? And it's a really interesting activity. There's a reading and there's a visual, which you can include within your class. Okay, so here we are. We've got why is English a global language? We have that image that I showed you. We've also got a very brief history of English, the reading that the students have to read. And yeah, you don't have to photocopy from the book anymore. You can access the resources online via PDF. And I really do hope, that the publishers decide in the future to incorporate a lot of the resources via PDF rather than having to go back to the book, photocopy, and go through the whole rigmarole of cutting it up, photocopying it again, making sure it's suitable for a class environment or a class lesson. Okay, so hopefully this is the way forward with regards to digital material and just printing out what you need with the particular lesson that you decide to undertake or deliver. So that's that. And I really do enjoy the book. It's a really interesting book. And for me personally, I found this book very, very useful. I never really considered ELF before. And obviously I'd studied it during my postgraduate years at university, or global English as it was then. And it was a very interesting topic, but I couldn't see how to incorporate global English within a classroom environment. And this book here really does help with regards to bridging that gap between, the academic thoughts and ideas with regards to English as a lingua franca and how to incorporate it within your lessons. And that's really, really good. And it's a bonus. And a huge thanks to the authors of attempting to bridge that gap. That's really, really good. Now, that's not my book review. That's not it at all. And I've just started and definitely recommend it. But I thought I would actually try out this particular lesson, which is why is English a global language? And for me, never having to incorporate ELF within my classroom before, I thought this would be a good introduction, not just for my students, but also for me. And so I went online, I downloaded the PDF, I got the actual lesson material, I printed it out, and as you can see, excuse me, you got the circles of English and the variant ideas there, and also you have a very brief history of English, and that's really, really useful. And this is what I did. I downloaded the PDF, I printed out a number of copies, and for my class I have 14 students, predominantly Japanese learners. I've got 2 Saudis, 1 Polish/Norwegian, and 1 Chinese. Okay, you can work out how many Japanese there are from that. So between 2, I handed out 1 of this, and I also incorporated some of the questions that were recommended in the book itself. And I had some discussion questions. What does this image show? What is the difference between the inner, outer, and expanding circles? And how did English come to be used in these countries? So it's really getting the students to have a think about it and trying to decide what this image shows. Obviously, I got some ideas and fed back. And the next part I did was I gave 1 reading per student, and I told them not to look at translation tools or their online dictionary, but just to read it for general understanding and refer to the discussion questions to find the answers as well. So that was it. I gave them a reading review, and I typed this up and printed it out myself, and there's 3 questions which are recommended in the book with regards to the reading. The first question: how did English first come about? How did English spread around the world? And why is English still important today? And these are 3 questions that you could probably ask yourself and consider when you're teaching English. Okay, and I'm not going to go into great depth or detail with regards to the different types of Englishes or which one's best, because that's not really the point of this video at all, and I don't think there is a best version of English personally. But anyway, let's go back. So I gave them the reading review, the reading questions, got them to discuss in pairs first of all, and then as suggested by the book, I put pairs into 4s and then 4s into 8, 2 7s, and then put the 7s together as a whole class to discuss some of the questions together. And then I fed the class back and tried to get their own ideas with regards to English. I put some additional questions up on the board. They could discuss it in a bit more depth. Trying to remember the questions I put up on the board, to be honest. And I think it was, what English words do you use in your country, or what English words have you adopted within your language? And there was another with regards to how do you use English in your country? And then that was it. It was quite a nice discussion. It was very thought-provoking, and the students reacted very well with regards to this type of material. And I'm very, very pleased with having to go out. Well, I went out my comfort zone with regards to the content of the material, and I delivered the lesson, and the students responded quite nicely. And the final part I decided to do was to actually get the students to reflect. And so I created a short, survey, I guess, with regards to the material. Excuse me. And so I wrote up 6 questions so they could spend their time and write down their answers. And, they responded quite positively with regards to this. And the first question was, what are your thoughts of English as a global language? And let me read out some of their answers, because Really, really interesting this. It's anonymous. I don't know who wrote this. So what are your thoughts about English as a global language? One student said, it's the best English to be used as a global language. It's easy to learn the pronunciation, the letters and grammar compared with other languages. Because some other languages share some elements with English. I suppose that's true, but, I'm not there to judge. Another student said, I think it's good because the English language is very important in the world. Okay, nowadays English is spoken in the world as a common language. You're an English speaker if you can only speak, listen to English, even if you can't write and read, in my opinion. So that's really interesting that, no matter what your ability is of English, everybody is an English speaker. Even if you can't read or write the language. It's really, really interesting. Okay, the second question was, have you ever learned about the history of English and why or why not? Okay, so one student said, I've learned the history of English, and it's because my teacher was an expert of history and the evolution of English in Japan. So that was really interesting. But the student says it was boring for me. But never mind. The other student said yes, because when I was in Japan, I studied the history of the English language. That's really interesting. Another student said, no, I didn't realise about the history and the evolution of English. So hopefully there's some thoughts and reflections going on there. The third question that I asked was, why is English important in your country? And one student said, well, for many reasons, for example, to use in the media, the business, science, tourism, and to connect to people. Another student said, well, many companies expand to foreign countries, and when the company negotiate, it needs to speak English. English is a global language, so we use it at work, travel, and so on. And then finally, another student said, we start to study English from 12 years old. English is a subject for an exam. Okay, so that's the importance for some. The fourth question that I asked my students to answer was, how is English used in your country? Well, they said, well, we create a new language by mixing Japanese and English. I think it's considered Japlish or Janglish. I'm not entirely sure. Some Japanese use English such as pen, banana, and so on. That reminds me of that song, pen, pineapple, pen, sort of thing. Yeah. Some say it's important. Well, how is English used in your country? It's used for science, economics, business, and tourism. The fifth question was, where do you see the future of English going in your country? Yeah? How's it going to progress? How's it going to develop in your country? This student says, sorry, I'm trying to decipher it at the same time. I think number of learning English is going. Okay, so I think I'll have to do a bit of feedback with regards to their writing in a future lesson. But anyway, the number of students or the number of learners studying English is increasing. So I wish we could speak English like native English speak. That's quite interesting. So even though they're looking at the global use of English, or how it's considered a global language, they're still trying, or learners are trying to attempt to communicate like a native speaker. So they're trying to go from the expanding circle within the inner circle. And it's quite an interesting thought. Where do you see the future of English going in your country? English education has come to attach a lot of importance in Japan, and a lot of people will study it more and more. This is an interesting idea. When I was a child, we studied English with fun activities. However, it's regarded as an issue, as Japanese can't speak English as well as other countries. Therefore, the education of English in Japan will be a bit more serious, or a bit more, it's that we can't speak, so we need to study more, rather than can't speak, so we need to speak a bit more. It's quite interesting. All right, and final question that I asked was, what are your thoughts about the 3 circles of English and the use of English in your country? I think countries which often use English are powerful countries in the world, but Japanese can't speak English well, so I think Japanese should be able to speak English well. Okay, so there's that sort of idea that if you can't communicate in English, you're at a disadvantage in a global world nowadays. So that's quite an interesting thought. And finally, there's another student. What are your thoughts about 3 circles of English? It's historical and natural. We need to keep learning English in order to do business. Okay, so there's some nice thoughts and reflections with regards to the students that I taught, and it was really, really interesting. And it was quite an eye-opening experience for me because, as I said, I've never taught this type of material or content before, and I found it very, very useful. Anyway, so what are my thoughts with regards to the book? After using it, I think it's a great book. I think it's invaluable, and I think that any teacher that decides to read this book will be inspired to incorporate English as a lingua franca within their classroom environment, and it's a nice development with regards to the teaching of English. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. Hit that like button, the thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, because this will tell you when I upload a new video. And I really appreciate everybody's support, and thank you very much. Slowly getting there with regards to 2,200 nearly, and we're nearly there. Also, a huge thanks again to the authors and the publishers for sending me the book. It's really appreciated, and thank you to all my students who agreed to participate with regards to this material. It's been wonderful to be involved with reviewing this book and also incorporating it within my lesson, and also reflecting and looking at some of the answers that students wrote with regards to the lesson. So thank you very much to everybody, and I'll see you next time, and happy teaching.